You know that feeling when you're planning something for weeks, maybe months, and you just want it to feel like something? Not flashy, not perfect, just real. That's how I felt prepping for Ellie's baby celebration. 33 weeks in, back aching like I'd fought a war in my sleep, I was dragging pastel garlands through our little apartment in Seattle, making sure every corner whispered calm. No planner. No helpers. No one even asked if I needed backup. Jocelyn, my mum, claimed she was buried in library work. My dad, Thomas, just said, "Let me know if you need anything," but never followed up. And Lily? My younger sister was mentally prepping for prom. Right. Still, I poured myself into it. I hand-cut paper clouds, picked acoustic tracks that reminded me of quiet mornings with good coffee. I made the playlist twice because the first one didn't feel enough. I baked tea cookies with a lavender glaze, thinking of Ellie's grandma, Rosa, who always said sugar felt like sand in her teeth. Everything I did was to build warmth, to be seen not as the guy who screwed up and knocked someone up, but as someone becoming a father on purpose. I had this tiny, probably delusional hope, maybe, just maybe, they'd show up for me this time. It was the kind of early spring day where the light pours in, like it's trying to say, "Sorry for all the rain." I lit a lavender candle, adjusted the handmade welcome, baby Ellie banner above the treats table, and tried to calm the tiny kicks in my stomach. She was just as restless as I was, maybe excited, maybe sensing what I couldn't quite admit I needed today to matter. People started showing up around 1 p.m. Aunt Rosa was first, clutching a woven basket filled with hand-me-down books and a vintage stuffed bunny. Then Aaron, bless him, came in with this goofy grin and a box wrapped in gold ribbon, humming the soft music I'd sent him in advance. He noticed every detail. "You really made this feel like a home," he said. I nearly teared up. For a moment, I thought maybe this will go okay. I got maybe 15 minutes of that. Jocelyn's fork tapped her glass. Just 3 little dings. Sharp. Artificial. Everyone turned toward her like she was the MC of the night. "We have something exciting to share," she smiled, that rehearsed, sweet-toothed tone she used right before she dropped something big. And there she was, Lily, coming out of the hallway in this crimson silk dress, like she was walking into the damn Oscars, holding a bright red envelope. "I got into Yale!" she shouted, and just like that the room exploded. People gasped. My dad clapped like he'd just won a Lifetime Achievement Award. Someone turned on loud music, her favourite playlist. The vibe flipped in seconds. The vanilla lavender cake I'd agonized over, pushed to the edge of the table to make space for takeout pizza. My mum-to-be sash, slipping off my shoulder unnoticed. I watched from behind the kitchen counter as everyone gravitated toward Lily, as if she was the gravity in the room, and I was just a decoration they'd forgotten to take down. No one asked about Ellie. No one looked at the banner. Even the soft acoustic songs I'd picked were replaced by pounding bass lines from Lily's Bluetooth speaker. Her friends I didn't even know spilled in through the front door, talking about internships and New York summers. Someone knocked over the tea I'd brewed. No one cleaned it up. I bent down, paper towels in hand, belly pressing into the cabinet edge, and wiped the mess, while Lily laughed loudly in the background about campus visits. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just sticky floors and swallowed pride. But in that quiet, hunched-over second I knew they crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let it slide. The next morning I stood barefoot in the kitchen. Everything smelled like old frosting and carbonated syrup. Ellie kicked again, soft but steady, like she was checking in. I leaned against the counter, holding a mug of peppermint tea. watching the sunlight roll over the mess they'd left behind pizza boxes half open, cups still sticky, napkins bunched up like forgotten apologies. My handmade banner was still there, bent at the edges now, sagging like my expectations. It wasn't the noise from the night before that haunted me. It was the silence after. The way no one texted, no one apologized, no one saw me walk upstairs. But they'd see me now. I opened the drawer beside the stove, the one where I kept the important stuff, deed papers, insurance forms, tax folders. I pulled out 3 white envelopes I'd pre-labeled weeks ago: Jocelyn, Thomas, Lily. I'd written the names carefully, underlined once. Nothing fancy, just clear. Inside each one was a copy of a 30-day notice to vacate, and a full breakdown of ownership, my name, my mortgage, my utilities. Not a single one of them had ever helped me pay for this apartment, not when the roof leaked, not when the water heater busted, not when the rent went up during peak season. I placed the envelopes neatly on the dining table. It was poetic, in a way. That's where they always left their dirty dishes, their bills, their junk mail. Now I was finally leaving something for them. At exactly 7:13 a.m, Jocelyn walked in with her almond milk mug and a tired sigh. Her hair was still in that messy bun she wore to pretend she was too busy for drama. Her eyes scanned the envelopes like they were just more unpaid bills. "What's this?" she asked, blinking. She tore hers open right there. Her eyebrows rose with each line she read. The mug tilted slightly in her hand. "Nathan, this has to be a joke, right?" she stammered. I stepped out from the hallway, calm but certain. "It's not. I already sent the official copies. These are just courtesy." She stared at me like I'd announced I was evicting a nun. "You're kicking us out?" "This isn't us," I said, gesturing around. "It's never been. I bought this place. I made it a home. You just moved in like you were entitled to it." Thomas entered the kitchen, his expression blank but heavy with disapproval. He picked up his envelope, flipped through it slowly, then frowned. "Nathan, you're about to become a father. Do you really want to create stress right now?" "That's exactly why I'm doing this," I said, placing my hand on my belly. "I don't want Ellie to grow up thinking this kind of treatment is normal, that her dad's silence equals strength." Lily showed up a few minutes later, yawning and tangled in her headphones. She looked at the envelopes, then at me. "What's going on?" she asked, still groggy. "She's kicking us out," Jocelyn snapped, "because we celebrated your Yale acceptance at the party." I let out a short laugh, bitter but dry. "It's not just about yesterday. It's about every time I was erased, every time you were rewarded for breathing while I was punished for trying." Lily blinked. "So where are we supposed to go? Some hotel? I've made a list of rentals. One of my friends offered to help pack. Movers can be here next weekend." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was heavy, accusatory. Like I had broken some unspoken pact of daughterly endurance. But I wasn't done. I reached into a manila folder on the kitchen island and pulled out bills, printed photos, the house deed with my name on it, receipts for plumbing, pest control, and groceries. Proof of who really kept this place standing. I looked directly at my dad. "Remember when Lily's car got totaled? You told me she was just young, made a mistake. I paid the repair with my business money. And when I brought it up, you told me to stop keeping score. Well, this is me cashing out." He didn't respond. He didn't deny it either. Jocelyn tried a different angle, softer now. "But we're family, Nathan. Don't you want Ellie to grow up with her grandparents?" I tilted my head. "Do you mean the grandparents who treated her dad like a handyman? Like a shameful mistake they had to work around?" "She'll need us," she whispered. "No," I replied. She'll need safety and peace, and to never watch her father scrub floors while her aunt dances in centre stage. Lily rolled her eyes. You're so dramatic, always have been, and you've always been the golden one, I said quietly. That's the problem. You're so used to being worshipped, you didn't notice when someone finally stopped. That day, the tension lingered like old smoke. They slammed doors. They made long calls to relatives. Jocelyn cried into her coffee while Thomas folded laundry for the first time in years. Lily blasted her playlists, louder than ever. But none of that changed anything. I had made my decision. And for once, it didn't require their approval. The days after I handed out the envelopes didn't explode. They simmered. That was worse in a way. No shouting matches, no slammed doors at first. Just this quiet shift in air, like the walls were holding their breath. But I was done holding mine. The apartment transformed into a strange in-between place. Jocelyn started playing the martyr. Every night, around 8 p.m, she'd sigh louder than necessary while folding laundry that wasn't hers. She spoke in half-volume laments, usually loud enough for me to hear in the next room. I just don't know where we went wrong, she'd whisper. I stayed up all night with him when he had chickenpox. And now I'm being thrown out like garbage. Thomas, ever the strategist, went the route of tactical chores. For the first time in my life, he started cleaning the stovetop, offering to grab groceries, asking if I wanted tea in the mornings. His way of saying, "Look, I can change. See? You don't have to go through with this." But it wasn't change, it was a campaign, a rebrand. Then there was Lily. She dropped the passive facade. Her anger hit hard and fast, loud music. Eye rolls, slamming doors, snide comments like, "I guess you're raising Ellie to be bitter too, huh?" Or, "You think kicking out your family makes you a better dad? It makes you cold." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. What they didn't know was that while they flailed and tried to play damage control, I had already lawyered up. Clarissa, my old friend from the early Etsy days, knew a lawyer named Val, sharp as steel and soft-spoken as rain, the kind who read Oregon tenancy law like bedtime stories. I emailed her the signed deed, the rent-free arrangement or lack thereof, the receipts, the paper trail I'd kept for months. "We've got everything we need," she said after our first call. If they push back, we push harder. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted my life back. But they weren't going quietly. One morning, I opened my inbox and stared at a message that turned my blood cold. A supplier I'd been negotiating with, a major one that could have tripled my monthly revenue, said they'd heard concerning rumours about my mental state. Something about emotional instability, unreliability post-birth. The sender didn't say who told them. They didn't have to. I printed the email and added it to the grey folder I now kept on my desk like armour. Proof, pattern, motive. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just forwarded the message to Val. That afternoon, I updated my eviction timeline, confirmed the delivery of legal notices, and changed the Wi-Fi password. I unplugged the spare router Lily used for her late-night TikTok benders. The wails that followed? Predictable. I wasn't being cruel. I was enforcing boundaries. There's a difference. By day 21, Jocelyn had stopped trying to guilt-trip me directly. Instead, she cried in the living room at strategic hours, dramatically sipping tea and flipping through baby name books, like I might suddenly ask for her input. I didn't. Thomas gave up the act too. He retreated into his quiet coffee and paper routine. The only words he offered now were half-muttered prayers that I might come to my senses. But I'd already come to them, and my senses told me this: the only thing more damaging than being ignored is continuing to live among people who enjoy ignoring you. Day 25, I caught Lily whispering on the phone, fast, panicked. the way people sound when they're bargaining with reality. Something about dorm deposits. And I swear, he's just being dramatic. I didn't interrupt. I just walked past her, quiet, steady. I had nothing left to prove. She caught up to me later, arms crossed, eyes red. If you do this, I won't have a place to study. I could lose my scholarship. You really want to mess up my future because you had a mood swing. I looked at her, not with rage, with clarity. You're scared? Good. That's what growing up feels like. You'll live. You're punishing me for getting into Yale, she spat. No, I'm reclaiming my home because no one bothered to ask how I was doing even while pregnant, cleaning up your celebration. She stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language, and maybe I had, because accountability? It wasn't fluent in our household. By day 28, the energy shifted. They knew it was real. Boxes started to appear. Not many. Just a few at first, hidden in corners like shame. Jocelyn stopped crying. Thomas stopped talking. Lily stayed in her room. But I could feel it, something lifting. 2 days later, I walked through the nursery, rearranging a shelf of tiny books Clarissa had given me. I paused on one with a pink bunny on the cover and traced the nameplate I'd stitched onto Ellie's wall. The same one that used to hang, unnoticed, behind Lily's congrats banner. This was Ellie's space now. Ours. On day 30, they would leave. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Day 30 began like any other morning. The skies over Seattle were unusually clear sunlight sliced through the windows with a warmth that felt almost symbolic. They were quiet when they left. No dramatic speeches. No last-minute tears or guilt-laden hugs. Just the sound of luggage wheels over hardwood, taped-up boxes creaking, and the front door opening and closing like a full stop on the end of a sentence. Jocelyn didn't say goodbye. She moved like she was in a trance. Shoulders tight, expression somewhere between disbelief and bitterness. Thomas looked at me one last time, almost like he wanted to say something, but in true Thomas fashion, he didn't. And Lily, my sister with the always perfect eyeliner and endless excuses, was the last to leave. She stood at the threshold, backpack over one shoulder, holding her phone like a lifeline. You'll regret this, she said flatly. I didn't flinch. No one's going to stand by you forever, I smiled, not mockingly, just steady. And I don't need anyone standing beside me to be myself. She blinked, like that sentence was a language she'd never learned. Then she turned and walked out, pulling the door behind her with a softness that felt wrong, too polite for all the noise they'd caused. And just like that, the apartment was mine again. But it wasn't just an empty space. It breathed differently. The air didn't carry the heaviness of expectation anymore. The silence didn't feel tense, it felt clean, like a long exhale after years of holding your breath. I walked through each room slowly that afternoon. No dishes in the sink. No crumpled paper towels on the counter. No passive-aggressive post-its about using the good towels. Just quiet, just mine. Ellie kicked again, more like a flutter this time, and I rested my hand on my belly, smiling down. We did it, I whispered. We really did. That evening, I moved her crib to the centre of the nursery, hung up the mobile Clarissa made from paper stars, and finished organising the little onesies by size. I lit a candle, not for the vibe, but because I could. Later that night, I stood on the balcony with a mug of peppermint tea, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. The light was soft, and I realised it was the first time I'd noticed it in weeks. It's been over a year now. Ellie arrived in late spring, healthy, stubborn, and perfect. She has my eyes, and Jocelyn's dimpled cheeks, not that I point that out to anyone. She laughs with her whole body. She reaches for the ceiling like she's daring the sky to come closer. Our home is different now. Every morning starts with the sound of her babbling, and every night ends with us curled up under the soft glow of the nursery lamp. I stitched her name into a wall, hanging a new one, not covered by anyone else's celebration, just hers. The business is steady. I hired a part-time packer, someone from the community centre who needed extra hours. I'm no empire, but the bills are paid, the fridge is full, and I haven't checked my bank balance out of fear in months. As for the people who used to live here, I don't hear from them. Not directly. Once in a while, a cousin on my dad's side sends a vague hope you're well text. Jocelyn apparently moved in with an old friend from church after wearing out her welcome at Thomas's cousin's place. Lily? Last I heard, she withdrew after her first semester at Yale. Couldn't handle the workload. Couldn't manage her own schedule. No, I don't feel triumphant. But I'm not surprised. And no, I didn't reach out. I didn't check in. Because closure doesn't always come from conversations. Sometimes it comes from silence that finally belongs to you. Sometimes you have to stop translating pain into something palatable for other people. One afternoon, while organising Ellie's memory box, I found the old baby shower cards. Some were sweet, others were barely filled out. I thought about tossing them, but I didn't. I placed them back in the box, not because they meant something, but because they reminded me where I started. Rock bottom with a belly full of hope. I walked out of that place with no fanfare, no applause, just grit, just steady, deliberate steps towards something better. That's the thing no one tells you. When you reclaim your space, your story, it's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's a whisper that turns into peace. A kitchen that stays clean. A child that grows up knowing love doesn't mean sacrifice without boundaries. A life that isn't performative or explained. It's lavender-scented silence and a room full of stars. It's a man named Nathan holding his daughter at dusk, no longer wondering when someone else will finally see him, because he already does. Story 2. You know those moments where your entire life snaps into a before and after. Yeah, mine came the night I found out my husband and my stepsister were sleeping together. But let me rewind. My name's Julia, 48, and for the better part of the last decade, I thought I had it figured out. My husband, let's call him Tom, 52, and I had been together for almost 12 years, married for 10. We were that annoyingly happy couple. You know the type, inside jokes, random Tuesday date nights, goofy dance parties while cooking pasta. He was my person, or at least I thought he was. Things started to shift subtly. It was the kind of change you don't notice until it's undeniable. Tom became glued to his phone, date nights got awkward, and there was this lingering silence between us that used to be filled with laughter. I knew something was off, but he chalked it up to stress. Work deadlines, long hours, the usual excuses. I wanted to believe him, God, I tried to believe him, but my gut wouldn't shut up. One Friday, I had this impulsive idea to surprise him with dinner. I even dressed up and drove down to his office, thinking maybe we could reignite something. But when I texted him, he claimed he was swamped and wouldn't be home for hours. As I sat there in my car, debating whether to wait or go, I saw him walk right out of the building. I followed him. I know, classic move. But something in me needed confirmation. He pulled into a bar. No co-workers, no client meetings, just him and a woman who, at first, had her back to me, and then she turned around. It was my stepsister, Megan. I don't remember much after that. Just a blur of heartache, rage, and the kind of betrayal that leaves your whole body buzzing. They were holding hands, laughing like two people with no secrets. Like two people falling in love behind my back. I didn't confront them. I couldn't. I left before they saw me and sobbed the entire drive home. Let me give you a little context about Megan. My mum married her dad when we were teenagers. We're 4 years apart, and at first we actually got along. But as time went on, it became clear that Megan had a talent, no, a gift, for manipulation. She could cry on cue, lie without blinking, and make people feel sorry for her no matter the circumstance. She was jealous of everything, my scholarships, my relationships, even my hair, if you can believe it. I had tried for years to build a bridge. She kept lighting it on fire, and now she had burned my whole damn house down. That night, I barely slept. I waited until Tom was snoring beside me, smelling like whiskey and guilt, and then I quietly took his phone to the kitchen and started scrolling. Messages, photos, emails. I documented everything. Screenshots upon screenshots. Evidence so clear it could testify on its own. The next morning, I left for my mum's. She was the only person I trusted to hear this without judgment. And when I showed her what I'd found, her face went pale. Megan had been like a daughter to her. This wasn't just my betrayal, it was hers too. So we made a plan. That weekend, I invited family and close friends over for a celebration dinner. Tom thought it was a random get-together. Megan showed up in a blush dress and a smug little smile. I smiled back, tight-lipped and shaking on the inside. After dinner, I tapped my glass and said, I had a little surprise for everyone. My mum brought out the projector and I connected my phone. One by one, the images flicked onto the screen. Tom and Megan at that bar, laughing, texting, cozy in each other's space, like it was normal. The room went silent. Gasps. Murmurs. Someone dropped a fork. I wanted you all to see this, I said calmly, even though I could barely breathe, because I'm done hiding. Tom and Megan have been having an affair, and I refuse to live a lie. Tom's face turned beet red. Megan looked like a deer in headlights. My mum stood beside me, her hand gripping mine so tight I thought she might break it. The fallout was nuclear, Tom stammered. Megan cried. My stepdad asked Megan point blank if it was true. She just nodded, sobbing. I made one final announcement before walking away from the wreckage. If Megan wants my husband, she can have him. I'm filing for divorce. And I suggest neither of you contacts me again. Tom moved out that week. I didn't wait for apologies. What could they say that would undo any of it? For a while, I was a ghost in my own life. Grief does that to you. It eats everything, appetite, energy, the will to even try. But then, slowly, I started to find pieces of myself again. Therapy helped. So did wine, long walks, and finally learning how to sleep without one eye open. And just when I thought I was starting to move on, Megan posted a photo. She and Tom, smiling, holding hands. Engagement ring front and center. The caption, so happy to spend forever with my soulmate. I nearly dropped my phone. My mum was furious. My stepdad didn't say a word, just walked into the room with a phone call from Megan. She wanted to share the big news. I asked him to put her on speaker. What followed was a masterclass in audacity. Julia, I know this is weird, but I really want us to move forward as sisters. Megan chirped. Tom and I are getting married, and it would mean so much to us if you could attend, maybe even give a little speech, just to show the family that you're okay with everything. My mum looked ready to throw the phone across the room. I took it instead. Megan, I said calmly, you want me to bless your wedding to the man you stole from me while we were still married. She didn't miss a beat. You were already separated. Technically. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. But in that moment, I made a silent vow. If she wanted a show, I was going to give her one she'd never forget. After that phone call, I sat in silence for a long time. You ever feel like your brain just shuts off? Like it hits a wall and says, nope, this is too much. We're clocking out. That was me, curled up on the couch, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My stepsister, the same one who wrecked my marriage, now wanted me to bless her union with my ex-husband like this was some twisted fairy tale. No, absolutely not. But the worst part, I wasn't even surprised. Megan had always been like this. If chaos were a sport, she'd have gold medals. She didn't care who she hurt, as long as she got what she wanted and everyone clapped while she did it. So I let myself cry that night. Hard. Not the quiet, tear down the cheek stuff. No, this was ugly, full-body crying. The kind that leaves you puffy and hoarse, the kind that empties you out. And when it was over, something shifted. Call it clarity, call it spite, call it self-respect waking up from a long nap. But I knew what I had to do. Megan wanted a performance? Cool, I'd give her one. Not by screaming, not by ruining her wedding in some dramatic soap opera way. No, I was going to be calm, graceful, strategic. But first, I needed help from someone she wouldn't see coming. His name was Ryan. Now, Ryan wasn't just anyone. He was the ex. Megan's big college love. The guy she swore she'd never get over. The guy whose name she literally had tattooed on her ribs after a tequila-fueled spring break. They'd broken up years ago after a messy, emotional spiral that she never really bounced back from. And yeah, I still remembered his name because Megan used to cry about him every Thanksgiving after 2 glasses of wine. So I found him on Facebook. His profile was private, but his profile pic, still hot, still Ryan, still very real. I sent a friend request and waited. He accepted 3 hours later. I messaged him that night, "Hi, you probably don't remember me, but I'm Julia, Megan's stepsister. I have a really strange and petty proposition. Can we talk?" To my surprise, he replied in 5 minutes. "You've got my attention." So I laid it all out. I told him about Tom, about the affair, about the divorce, about Megan's engagement, and, most importantly, about the invitation she sent me, asking me to speak at their wedding. There was a pause. Then came his response. Holy sh! I thought Megan was dramatic in college, but this is next level. What do you need from me? I asked him if he'd come to the wedding with me, not to cause a scene, just to exist, to smile, to be seen. He said yes. Now, before anyone comes for me, no, I wasn't doing this to get back at Megan through Ryan. I didn't flirt with him, didn't lead him on. I was honest. I wanted her to feel exactly what I'd felt when I saw her with Tom, like the ground had been ripped from beneath her, like she couldn't breathe, like everything familiar had been twisted into something unrecognizable. I ran the plan by my mum, who, God bless her, just sipped her tea and said, "Well, she asked for your blessing." My stepdad was a little more hesitant. He thought it might be a bit much, but honestly, after everything they put me through, I didn't care. I wasn't going to scream or throw wine or make a scene. I was going to show up with quiet, uncomfortable power. The day of the wedding came quicker than I expected. I wore a deep green dress, fitted, elegant, nothing too flashy, but definitely not forgettable. I curled my hair, put on some heels I hadn't worn in years, and for the first time in a long time. I felt good. Ryan picked me up. He looked sharp, navy suit, clean shave, the works. And when I stepped out of the house, he whistled and said, "Damn, Megan's going to need a seatbelt." We drove to the venue. Some overpriced countryside vineyard with fairy lights and champagne fountains. The kind of place that screams Instagram wedding, but feels like a staged play. As we walked in, heads turned. I wasn't imagining it, people noticed. Even Tom's face dropped when he saw us. His eyes flicked from Ryan to me and back again. He recognized him. Of course he did. Megan used to talk about Ryan like he was a Greek tragedy. He didn't say anything. Couldn't. Just clenched his jaw and walked off. And then came the grand entrance. Megan walked down the aisle like she owned the air. Dress fitted to the gods, smile perfectly rehearsed, until she saw us. She stopped, dead in her tracks. Our eyes met. I didn't flinch, just gave her a small, polite smile. Her gaze shifted to Ryan. And the moment her brain connected the dots, her whole face changed. You could almost see her panic, like a glitch in the Matrix. But the music didn't stop. Guests were still standing. Her dad, my stepdad, was waiting at the altar with that proud father look. So she had to keep walking. She did, but not without stealing glances at me every 3 seconds. The ceremony itself was quick. I didn't hear a word of it. I was too busy watching Megan fidget. Her smile kept slipping. She whispered something to Tom during the vows, and I swear he looked over at me with pure murder in his eyes. But the best part, the reception. After the ceremony, we made our way to the open-air dining area. Fairy lights, white linen, overpriced centerpieces, the whole shebang. And that's when Megan snapped. She stormed over in her wedding gown, heels clicking like gunshots. "What the hell is this?" she hissed. I raised my champagne. "A toast. Why is he here?" she demanded, pointing at Ryan like he was a cockroach on her cake. I smiled. "He's my +1. You said I could bring someone. You remember Ryan, right?" Ryan leaned in, cool as ever. "Nice to see you again, Megan. You look surprised." "You're ruining my wedding," she whispered, voice shaking. I shook my head. "No, Megan, you ruined my marriage. This is just symmetry." She opened her mouth to argue, but the guests were watching. Tom had joined us now, clearly fuming. My mum swooped in before it got worse and gently pulled Megan aside. "And me?" I grabbed another drink and danced. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just existed. And that, more than anything, seemed to unnerve her. By the end of the night, Megan was so shaken she cut the reception short. Tom barely looked at me. Ryan and I took a few photos with the photo booth props, grabbed some mini desserts, and dipped out. As we left, I looked back one last time at the fairy-lit mess behind me. I felt free. I didn't expect the fallout to be so fast. The morning after Megan's wedding, or, well, what should have been her wedding celebration, I woke up to 3 missed calls and 2 voicemails from Tom. I didn't listen. Just blocked his number and deleted the history. Whatever he had to say, I'd already heard enough. Twice. Turns out, Megan never made it to the honeymoon suite. She left the reception early, locked herself in the bridal room and cried. Her makeup ran, her dress wrinkled. One of the servers later told a friend of mine that Megan kept whispering, "Why would she bring him?" over and over like it was some sacred betrayal. And Tom? He apparently spent the night pacing the parking lot, yelling at anyone who tried to talk to him. Can't lie. I felt a little bad for the caterers. Not for them. 3 days later, my stepdad called. Said Megan had called off the marriage. Just like that. No explanation, no apology, just cold feet and a cancelled wedding license. He was shocked. My mum wasn't. "I told you," she said to him, folding her arms. "That girl will ruin herself before anyone else gets the chance." The funny thing is, I wasn't even mad anymore. Not really. Somewhere between the lies, the betrayal, and that ridiculous engagement post, I had let go. Maybe not completely, but enough to stop bleeding over people who'd never even said sorry. I think the wedding was the last straw for Megan. Seeing Ryan shook her up more than she'd expected. I don't know if it reminded her of the person she used to be or if it just brought up everything she tried to bury, but something in her snapped that day. Tom tried to hold it together. For a week or two, he posted weird, passive-aggressive quotes on Facebook. Stuff like, "Some people only come back to cause more damage," or "If you're not clapping when I win, don't act surprised when I stop losing. I rolled my eyes so hard I gave myself a headache." Eventually, they both went quiet. According to my cousin, who still talks to Megan out of guilt, I guess, she moved back in with her dad. Tom's living alone in the same house we used to share. Apparently, he's been asking mutual friends if I'm seeing anyone new. The answer, none of your business, Tom, because while they were licking their wounds, I was living. I started therapy, joined a book club, took a solo weekend trip to the mountains and didn't tell anyone where I was going. I'd never done that before. Just packed a bag, booked a cabin, and drove with the windows down and music up. And it felt good. No guilt, no second guessing, just me, rebuilding. I also reconnected with some old college friends. Turns out, time really doesn't kill good friendships. Neglect does. But when I reached out, they were there. Coffee dates, movie nights, quiet dinners filled with inside jokes. Real people, real love. Ryan and I still talk sometimes, not romantically, just two people who understand what it feels like to be burned by the same flame. We check in on each other now and then. Last week, he sent me a picture of a plant he almost killed, but managed to revive. He wrote, "Resilient, like us." He was right. I didn't get revenge with screaming or slaps or public meltdowns. I got it by healing, quietly, in full view, by not letting bitterness rot my bones, by walking into a room and watching the people who broke me struggle to make eye contact, not because I shouted, but because I didn't have to. That's the thing they never expect. People like Megan and Tom, they feed off drama. They want you to be loud, messy, reactive. But when you go still, when you go calm, that scares them more than any raised voice ever could. Because it means you've already moved on, and they're stuck. Truth is, I don't wish them pain. I just don't wish them anything at all. Not anymore. They built their house of lies, and it collapsed without me ever having to touch it. Me? I built something better, something quiet, something whole. And for the first time in a long time, I'm proud of the woman looking back at me in the mirror. She's been through hell, and she walked out holding the fire. Story 3, I'm Lara, 35, and I've always been the responsible one among us 3 siblings. The glue when things cracked, the peacekeeper when tempers flared. My younger brother, Sean, 33, is my closest friend. Then there's our youngest sibling, Camille, 27, the golden child, according to everyone who knows us. And they're not wrong. Growing up, Sean and I shared a pretty typical sibling dynamic, occasional fights, shared jokes, and protective instincts. Camille, on the other hand, was born when we were already in high school. From the moment she arrived, everything shifted. My parents, especially my mum, acted like she was royalty. Maybe it was the surprise of having a third child late in life. Maybe it was the youngest daughter syndrome. Either way, she was pampered into entitlement. My dad used to keep things in check. He wasn't a pushover like Mom. He'd call Camille out when she crossed the line. But Mum? No way. In her eyes, Camille was flawless. And if anyone so much as hinted otherwise, she'd shut it down fast. I remember so many moments where Camille would say something completely uncalled for, and Mum would laugh it off like it was just a funny little quip. Never mind that it made someone else feel like crap. Sean and I tried to keep our distance once we left for college. Camille was still living in a bubble at home, occasionally lobbing insults at us during holidays. She'd mock our careers, call us boring, say Sean was wasting his life studying literature, and once told me flat out that I looked too tired to ever find a boyfriend. Her favourite jab was how unattractive people with under-eye circles were. I worked long hours, and apparently that made me both unfeminine and undesirable in her eyes. The tension was always there, simmering just under the surface. After our dad passed away 8 years ago, the cracks became canyons. Sean and I pulled back. We still showed up for the obligatory family events. Thanksgiving, a rare Christmas but otherwise, we built lives apart from Mum and Camille. Sean and I got closer. Without Dad as the buffer, it was clear Mum had chosen a side, and it wasn't ours. We accepted it and moved on. He dove into his writing. I focused on my career. I eventually became CFO of a successful firm. Money, thankfully, has never been an issue for me. A few weeks ago, Sean slipped on some stairs and fractured his ankle. His insurance covered the hospital stay, but the physical therapy, meds, and a full-time caregiver weren't cheap. He insisted he'd figure it out, but I stepped in. He was between jobs, working on launching his online magazine. It felt like the right thing to do. He's my brother, and more importantly, he's someone who's shown up for me time and again. Helping him wasn't even a question. That's when the storm rolled in. Camille found out I'd helped Sean, probably through Mum, who somehow knows everything, and within days, I got a call from her. No pleasantries, no catching up, just straight to the ask. She'd found a penthouse apartment, yes, penthouse that she wanted to buy. She could afford half, but needed help with the rest. And she assumed I'd be happy to cover it, since I helped Sean too. I hadn't spoken to her in more than a few passing conversations over 8 years, and suddenly she was asking me to co-sign a luxury real estate dream. She framed it as a milestone, how, at 27, it was embarrassing to still live at home. I almost laughed. Camille works as a freelance graphic designer, though I'd argue it's more of a hobby than a job. She's never studied design formally, never worked for a firm. She's done a couple of posters for our dad's old business ones they never even used. But in her world, that counts as a career. I told her no, plain and simple. I wasn't rude, just direct. She got defensive, said Sean didn't even need the money, but I helped him anyway. That I was playing favourites. I tried not to lose my cool. I just reiterated that Sean and I have a real relationship and that he didn't ask for help I offered. With Camille, it was entitlement, not need. I hung up. She called back several times, but I ignored her. Then Mum called. If I thought Camille's request was bold, Mum's reaction was outrageous. She said I was being cruel to Camille. That I was playing favourites, that Camille had searched so hard for this apartment, and now I was ruining her plans. She even said I owed it to the family because of how they raised me. That's when I snapped. I reminded her that Sean and I had learned a long time ago where we stood in this family. I told her flat out that she could go no contact if that's what she wanted, because emotionally, we'd been low contact for years already. She claimed she was heartbroken, that I was the one destroying the family. I told her I was done pretending we were something we're not. Then I hung up. That evening, I blocked both of them. On everything. And I felt peace. I hadn't told many people this, but I'd gotten engaged recently to my partner of 5 years, Jake. He's met Mum and Camille once or twice, but he knows the whole history. We were planning a small, intimate wedding. I was debating whether to invite them, trying to be the bigger person. But now, that decision was made for me. They were never going to be happy for me anyway. A few days later, Jake got a message from Mum. Not me, Jake. She told him she was disappointed in me. That Camille and she had decided to cut ties. That I'd ended what little family bond we had left. Funny, I thought they ended it years ago. And that's where I'll pause for now. What comes next is the part I didn't expect, how even when you walk away from toxic people, they still find new ways to stir the pot. After I blocked Mum and Camille, things got quiet. Almost too quiet. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for some passive-aggressive text or guilt-ridden email. It was just silence, and I was good with that. Sean and I were talking more than usual. He was healing well and finally getting his magazine off the ground. We both agreed it felt like we were finally breathing without the weight of obligation pressing on our chests. But peace, as always in our family, doesn't last long. About a week after the fallout, our Uncle Dad's younger brother, Mitch, called me. Now, Mitch isn't the meddling type. He's steady, practical, and after Dad passed, he took over the family business because none of us kids wanted to. Dad trusted him completely. I did too. He asked if we could talk. Said it was about Mom and some decisions she was making. I already had a gut feeling this wasn't going to be good. Turns out Mom had decided she was going to transfer part of her shares in Dad's company over to Camille. Not just that she was trying to give Camille voting power. Let me pause here and make this clear. Camille has zero business experience. The only time she came near a ledger was when she spilled coffee on it during one of Dad's company picnics. Uncle Mitch wasn't calling to gossip. He was worried. He'd spent years keeping the business thriving, honouring the way Dad built it. The idea of Camille with her champagne, tastes, and glitter in my hair mindset, having decision-making authority, that was a nightmare waiting to happen. He wanted Sean and me to step in, maybe talk some sense into Mum before she did something irreversible. Sean and I had a long call that night. Neither of us wanted to see Mum or Camille again. But Uncle Mitch had always been there for us, quietly, without asking for anything in return. So we agreed. One last time, we'd try. When we showed up at Mum's house, Camille was there, of course. She was lounging on the sofa in silk pyjamas at 2 p.m., sipping something that looked expensive and unnecessary. Her face twisted the second she saw us, like we were burglars breaking into her castle. We ignored her and went straight to Mum. I'll give Mum this, she was calm. Cold, but calm. We told her we'd heard from Mitch, and we were here to ask her, seriously, to reconsider. Giving Camille voting power in the company wasn't just irresponsible, it was dangerous. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, arms crossed. So I kept going. Mum, you know, Dad didn't want us kids involved in the company. That's why he gave Mitch control. You respected that for years. Why change now? Camille cut in with a smirk. Maybe because I actually care about the company. Unlike you two, I almost laughed. Camille, you didn't even know what the company did until last year. You thought EBITDA was a makeup brand. She started yelling. Something about jealousy. That I couldn't stand to see her succeed. Sean stepped in, calm as always, and tried to steer it back. This isn't about jealousy, he said. It's about honouring what Dad wanted. He trusted Mitch to lead the company, not us, not you. That's what he said, repeatedly. Camille scoffed. Well, he's not here, is he? That line cut deep. For all Dad's faults, his silence when Mom played favourites, his tendency to avoid conflict, he'd at least tried to be fair. And he never would have handed the business to someone who saw it as a fashion accessory. Mum finally spoke. You two have no right to come in here and lecture me. Not after the way you've treated this family. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I took a deep breath. You made your choices, Mum. We made ours. But this is bigger than our personal issues. If you give Camille this power, you'll be risking everything Dad built. She didn't respond, just stared at us like we were strangers. Eventually, she told us to leave. Said she didn't think about it and let Mitch know her decision. We left. Camille stayed behind. Of course she did. Back in the car, Sean was quiet. I knew he was angry, but he's not the kind to show it. I, on the other hand, was shaking from holding it all in. All we could do now was wait. A week passed, then 2. Nothing. Finally, Mitch called. Said Mom had decided not to give Camille voting power, but she did transfer preferred shares to her. So now Camille had income from the company, but no say in how it's run. Relief isn't the right word. It wasn't a win. It just felt like avoiding a slow-motion train wreck. Sean and I didn't celebrate. There wasn't much to celebrate. We hadn't fixed anything. We just prevented it from getting worse. And Mom, she's still not speaking to us. She considers our visit an attack. That's fine. Let her stay mad. Meanwhile, Camille took her usual spin, told extended family she was being ostracized for trying to take initiative. She made herself the martyr in a group chat with our cousins. Claimed we stormed into the house demanding money. One of my aunts texted me asking if it was true. I sent her a screenshot of Camille's business plan, a Pinterest board titled Luxury Office Vibes. That shut things down fast. The icing on the cake? Mum put the old family house up for rent and moved into that same penthouse Camille had begged me to pay for. They're living there together now. Camille gets to say she moved out, while Mum foots the bill. Again, Camille posts Instagram stories with captions like, "Just 2 boss babes living the dream," while standing in front of furniture she didn't buy in a home she didn't earn. She's still pretending, but at least now she's not pretending with my money. As for me, I'm planning a wedding. Invitations went out last week. Camille and Mum didn't get one. Apparently that didn't sit well with them. And what they do next, that's where things get really interesting. After everything that happened with Mum and Camille, the first thought I was finally free. No more awkward texts, no more guilt-tripping calls, no more pretending we were one big happy family when it was always just a house of cards. But, like clockwork, when the wedding invites went out, one last ripple hit. I hadn't planned to make a statement. Not inviting them wasn't some dramatic protest. It just felt honest. Why would I let people into one of the happiest days of my life when they'd spent years making me feel like I didn't belong? A few relatives did reach out. Some were neutral, just curious. Others, not so much. I heard through the grapevine that Mum and Camille were furious when they found out they weren't invited. They didn't call me, of course. They went straight to everyone else, telling people I'd banned them, that I was cutting ties for attention. Camille even tried convincing some cousins to boycott the wedding altogether. But our family's not as naive as they used to be. They've seen the patterns too. Most of them ignored her. Some even quietly congratulated me, said they understood. One cousin joked that Camille trying to start a boycott only confirmed that I made the right call. I had to laugh, 'cause yeah, it really did. And while all that chaos swirled in the background, life moved forward. Sean's magazine launched and took off faster than any of us expected. He's building something from the ground up, just like Dad did. He's calm, thoughtful, and real. Camille once called him a failed poet. Now he's getting interviews with authors she probably couldn't name. Me? I got married last week. It was small, just 50 people, friends who'd become family. Actual family who still show up without keeping score. The venue was a quiet garden just outside the city. Warm lights, music that made your heart feel full, and people who knew us, not just by name, but by heart. I walked down the aisle with no regrets, no longing for anyone who wasn't there. I didn't scan the crowd hoping to see Mum's face. I didn't pause to wonder if Camille had softened. I just walked. Jake stood at the end of that aisle with eyes that said everything. We built this life together, without permission, without validation, without needing approval from people who never really saw us to begin with. After the ceremony, while we were eating cake under string lights, Jake leaned over and said, "You know, if peace had a sound, I think it would be this." And he was right. It wasn't quiet in the traditional sense. There was laughter, clinking glasses, music drifting into the night. But there was no tension, no tightness in my chest, just this overwhelming calm. A few days later, one of our cousins sent me a screenshot. Mum had posted a long, vague status about daughters who forget where they came from and mothers who only wanted love. The usual veiled jabs. Camille commented with hearts and a crying emoji. I didn't respond. I didn't even read it twice. That's how I knew I was finally over it. They're still trying to rewrite the story, still spinning their own version where I'm the villain, and Camille's just the misunderstood artist trying to live her best life. I don't need to argue. Let them write their fantasy. I'm living my reality. Mum moved into that penthouse with Camille, like I said. She put the family house up for rent. From what I've heard, Camille keeps talking about starting a design firm. The only firm thing she's committed to lately is weekly spa appointments and editing her selfies to look like she has a LinkedIn. They've made themselves the center of a world that doesn't include me, and I'm not mad about it. Let them play house in that glass tower. Let them pretend they're untouchable. I've stopped knocking on doors that never opened. I stopped hoping people would meet me halfway when they never took a single step. Some people think cutting off family is too extreme. They say blood is thicker, but I've learned something over these years. Blood might run deep, but peace runs deeper. And I chose peace. For years, I kept trying to earn their love, thinking if I helped enough, if I gave enough, if I swallowed enough pride, maybe they'd see me. But they saw exactly who I was. They just didn't care. So I stopped trying. I got a partner who respects me, a brother who's more family than anyone else ever was, and a career I built with my own hands. That's more than I ever thought I'd have when I was 16 and being told I was too serious to be lovable. Now, I know better. I'm not too serious. I'm not too cold. I'm not too ambitious. I was just too real for people who only loved the version of me that served their narrative. And the real me? She's not on sale anymore. So here I am, married, free, unapologetically distant from people who never saw me as more than a resource. No dramatic finales, no big revenge, just boundaries and the quiet power of not needing them to understand.